This is Rachel, an undergraduate pharmacology student.
And today, we're going to be addressing the trending topic of vaccinations. Currently, we've seen a resurgence in the incidences of diseases which are easily preventable by vaccinations. And this rise seems to be happening alongside the spread of misinformation about vaccinations. Seeing all these myths and misinformations being spread about vaccinations is insane. Even more so when celebrities decide to use their platforms irresponsibly to further perpetrate these unsubstantiated claims about vaccinations. So today, we're going to delve into the background of vaccinations and why exactly they work. So let's get started. So thanks to Edward Jenner, today we have vaccinations.
Vaccines are preventative, and preventative medicine is usually more ideal than curative medicine. When we inject vaccines into patients, we are injecting a weakened or a dead version of the disease bacteria or virus to the patient. Outside of injections, nasal sprays are also a possible way to administer these vaccinations, although intramuscular injections are the most widespread and common method of administration. When these neutralized versions of the pathogens enter your body, your white blood cells, which are like the soldiers of the defense system of your body, are triggered to produce antibodies to fight the disease. These antibodies are stored until the body needs them. These antibodies are then able to neutralize that specific invading pathogen in case the patient encounters the disease again. In case of second encounter, the response to the disease will be quick and efficient, thus causing much less problems than if the patient had gotten the disease with no vaccination protection against the disease. Now, what makes vaccines even more effective is if everyone who can medically handle it gets vaccinated. This is due to herd immunity. When this herd immunity breaks down, there are very high risks to the wider population. A fairly recent example was within a community in Brooklyn, New York, where flyers were wrongly distributed, falsely claiming links between vaccines and autism. This false information caused a great drop in the rates of vaccination within the community, and this steep decline correlated with the same community being at the center of one of the largest outbreaks of measles in the USA in decades. So, how does this herd immunity work, and why is it so effective? This is because without vaccination, pathogens can travel quickly from person to person in a community, causing sickness in many individuals. With enough individuals sick, this can lead to an outbreak. However, outbreaks will not be problems if everyone who is medically able to is vaccinated against the specific disease, as then the pathogen cannot travel as easily from person to person. With that, the entire community is less likely to get the disease if everyone who is able to is vaccinated, thanks to herd immunity. Thus, even if a community has one person sick, with very high vaccination rates, there is a much lower chance of outbreak of the disease, as it is much harder for the disease to spread now. In turn, all of this will also end up helping protect those who are medically unable to receive the vaccination from getting sick. With proper vaccination, the disease then becomes much more rare, and sometimes may even be eradicated.
Despite vaccinations saving tens of millions of lives in this past century, in some countries, there still seems to be a trend for vaccine hesitancy, in which there is an increasing rise in the incidences of people refusing vaccinations. So what's going on? Based on current trends, the biggest reason why people are not vaccinating, and especially not vaccinating their children, is because of fear. And this fear is not helped by the fear-mongering done by the anti-vaxxers. However, fear often stems from the lack of knowledge. To address these fears and clear up some myths, today we caught up with some leading experts in their fields who can talk to us about vaccinations. Come on, let's take a look.
My name is Timothy Caulfield, and I'm a Canada Research Chair in Health Law and Policy here at the University of Alberta, and I do research on a broad range of science policy issues, including vaccines.
I am a pediatrician and I specialize in infectious diseases. And I've worked at the University of Alberta since 1991, so for 28 years.
Well, it's a fascinating topic because vaccines, you could make a very compelling argument that vaccines are the single greatest achievement of biomedicine. They save millions of lives every single year, mostly kids. So this is really important stuff. So it's very frustrating that right now we're seeing a growth in individuals that are vaccination hesitant. So this has become a serious health and science policy issue, really a science communication issue that we need to tackle, not just in Canada, but around the world.
So after clean water, vaccinations are the most important public health intervention ever and have certainly saved more lives and prevented more diseases than many other medical inventions that people get all excited about.
The worry is that people who hear those words and wonder about it will then not have their child vaccinated, which has led to a higher incidence of things like mumps and measles, that kind of thing.
I don't know if those statistics are accurate. I'm not the one to say, but I would question even that.
Some children can't handle all of the shots. We're talking about those kids. We're an intelligent group of parents that know that we need a vaccine schedule, but we think it's overloaded.
Yeah, the overload immune system myth is one of the most persistent and one of the ones you hear the most often, right? I always hear it in this context. I'm not against vaccines. I'm just against overloading my child's immune system. Or why do we have to give all of these vaccines at once? Well, this is actually, again, scientifically inaccurate. Our immune system is built to take, a whole bunch of challenges all at once. An infant probably could have hundreds of challenges to his or her immune system in a given day, right? Our immune system is built to handle a lot of challenges. So just having, several at once when you get your vaccines, no evidence that it's harmful.
Think about children in daycare centers and how many different viruses they can be exposed to in a given week. And there certainly is no evidence that creates any long-lasting harm.
Robert, it is nearly consensus in the scientific community that there's no link there. Do you believe that's not true?
I believe it's much more complicated than that. It's much more complicated than that. There is a link.
The autism myth is one of the most damaging and one of the most persistent. This is an incredibly frustrating myth. First of all, it's not even really scientifically plausible. There's not really any biological mechanism why this should be the case, number one. Number two, there is a lot of good, very good, independent science that says that it's not true, that there is, evidence tells us there is no connection between autism and getting a vaccine. But despite that, this myth lives on. And anytime you try to refute the myth, people will bring up conspiracy theories, big pharma conspiracies.
There's a lot of information about things that are happening with the CDC, the pharmaceutical companies. There's a lot of things that are not said.
So it's a myth that lives on and has a real impact.
So the original study that suggested there was any possible association appeared in the Lancet long ago, but the first author was a man named Andrew Wakefield. The study has since been officially withdrawn. All the authors other than him have agreed that their conclusion that vaccines cause autism was not at all proven by the data that they had.
I, as a parent of a child who has autism, I'm concerned, and I want to know the truth, and I'm not anti-vaccine. I want safe vaccines.
Well, if they were poisonous, we wouldn't be providing them to small children. Vaccines are studied incredibly well now before they were ever put on the market. Vaccines do contain a tiny, tiny amount of aluminum, but there is aluminum in breast milk as well, and there's no evidence that the amount of aluminum given with vaccines is harmful in any way.
You often hear that they have things like mercury in them, and that these kinds of ingredients can be very harmful. Well, this is problematic on several levels. Well, let's just tackle two. First of all, most vaccines that we get today, in fact, no, I don't believe any vaccines in Canada now have mercury in them. So the idea that mercury is even in these vaccines is a myth. Secondly, even if there was mercury in there, it would be in such a small amount that it would be, virtually harmless. People get exposed to more mercury just in their daily lives than they would in the context of a vaccine. But more importantly, people need to remember that there is a really robust surveillance system in Canada and most countries that are looking for adverse effects, that are looking for the possibility that vaccines are having some kind of harmful effect. Yes, there's always risks with any kind of intervention, but here in Canada, the risks associated with vaccines are very small in general and very rare in general. And people need to remember that. An independent entity is watching for adverse effects, is watching for harms, so we know what's going on.
With all this information pointing towards vaccinating as the road to go down, please consider vaccinating. Although yes, there are some minor risks, such as side effects, that come with vaccinations, the benefits by far outweigh the risks. So in conclusion, vaccinate your kids and yourself if you haven't been vaccinated.